Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar Decoding Job Applications presented by the ibpsa-usa EPSI committee. While we wait for everyone to settle in, here's a quick rundown of what you can expect today. Today's session will be recorded and available through ibpsa-usa's YouTube channel. If you have any issues hearing the presentation, please try calling in by your phone instead of using the computer audio. This is a Zoom webinar, so you can participate by posting questions, comments in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be viewable by all the attendees, and there's an option to submit anonymously if you prefer. So first things first, for those who don't know us, we are EPSI, Emerging Professionals and Students of ibpsa USA. EPSI is a peer group under ibpsa USA aimed at professionals with less than 5 years of experience in the building performance industry. We connect early career analysts with resources, networking opportunities, and leadership insights to help you grow in your career. So this webinar is the fourth installment of our career advancement webinar series. And today we are tackling something we all have struggled with, decoding job applications. These are the links to some of our older webinar recordings that you can check out. And we have a packed schedule today featuring a live resume review with our panelists and a mock interview session. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll have dedicated Q&A segment to address your questions. However, feel free to submit your questions at any time during the sessions. We are thrilled to have two amazing experts with us today. I'm honored to introduce our first panelist, the wonderful Uma Patwardhan. Uma is the director and team lead at JLL's North America Sustainable Buildings team with over 11 years of experience in sustainability consulting. Uma specializes in creating ESG-aligned strategies, certifications like LEED, WELL, Fitwel, and more. With her background in architecture, Uma has a unique perspective on building design, operation, and integrating sustainability into clients' overall project strategies. Welcome, Uma. Our second panelist is the amazing Patrick Pease. Patrick is the associate principal at Bureau Happold and the US building performance leader. He's a tech-savvy innovator with a decade of experience in energy modeling and high-performance building design. He's worked on projects across US and EU, including cutting-edge solutions for labs, healthcare, and education sectors. We are so lucky to have amazing people who are also involved in hiring, by the way, to guide us today. Thank you, Uma and Patrick. We look forward to hearing your insights. Let's kick off by diving into some basics of what makes a truly powerful resume. Your resume isn't just a document, it's your ticket to unlocking the next big opportunity. It's often your first impression on a potential employer, so it's crucial to make it count. To simplify what goes into a standout resume, we have created a handy mnemonic, CORE. It stands for concise. Keep it clear and to the point. Employers do not have time to sift through your lengthy paragraphs. Highlight the most impactful information. Organized. Present your information in a clean and a logical way. An easy to read layout can make all the difference. Relevant. Tailor your resume to the job you're applying for. Focus on your skills and experience that align with the job requirements. And engaging. Use compelling language to showcase your achievements and make your resume stand out in the sea of applications. Remember, you have less than 30 seconds to capture the interest of a hiring manager. Let's make sure your resume packs a punch and gets you noticed. Now, this is standard information for some of us, but it might be helpful for our students in the audience today. There are two main types of resume, visually communicative and ATS readable. What are readable resumes? They are designed for applicant tracking system, which scans the resume for specific keywords to assess if you're a good fit for the role. Most large companies use ATS, so when in doubt, assume your resume will be processed by one and tailor accordingly. One rule to remember, keep it simple. No fancy fonts, no complex formatting. Visually communicative resumes, on the other hand, can be fancy. Use these when you're directly emailing a recruiter or reaching out to someone via LinkedIn. Since a real person will be reading these, you can focus on the design and the visual appeal. No matter the format, every resume should include 4 sections: personal information, professional experience, education summary, and relevant skills. Our panelists will later dive into how to prioritize these sections and what recruiters look for the most. So, ahead of our webinar, sorry, we asked our EPSI community to submit their resume for a live review by our panelist. From those submissions, we selected two examples. Uma will be reviewing person A's resume, and Patrick will dive into person B's resume. Let me pull up person A's resume, and then it is all yours. Uma, just all right.
Right. Well, thanks for having me. So overall, this is a good, concise resume, something that we discussed before. However, there are some key things that need to be revised here to make it a little bit more effective. Just to give you a visual aid while I'm speaking, I think so the work experience being the most important section of your resume needs to be first. If you're fresh out of school, that this can be a little bit difficult. But if there was any job, internship, campus job, etc., that you could mention, that would be good. You can try to think of what you excelled in those jobs and showcase how you could use some of those skills to the job that you're applying to, and focus on how you can build upon those skills now that you have your education to back those fresh out of school jobs. If you are applying for your second or third job, then your first job's experience becomes the most important thing in your resume. Follow those up with skills and credentials. Relevant experience and applicable skills and credentials is a great way to catch the recruiter's eyes. While education is relevant information, it can go towards the end of your resume, mainly because the idea is that the other sections will help establish if you are a good fit for the job requirement or not. I would certainly take out the GPA information, since I don't think anybody really cares about it, mainly because it does not give any insight into whether you would excel at the job that you're applying for or not. So, which is why even if you were fresh out of school, as I mentioned, any skills that you showed in your campus job might be more relevant than the GPA that you actually got. Um, as discussed earlier, remember that the recruiter or recruiting managers like Patrick or myself, we get hundreds of resumes, and you need to catch our attention by putting the most important and relevant information in the front, which is why the experience counts the most. Assume that we will not read beyond the first quarter unless we think you're a good fit and should be shortlisted for further investigation. Um, it was already discussed that use good resume templates that are eye-catching. Make sure that your descriptions are less wordy. Highlight relevant information, and by highlight, it can mean using bold font or different font sizes or color. And most importantly, uh, tailor your resume to the job you're applying for, or at least those that you think you will really fit the best, and you're not just mass applying to the jobs. This is what I think based on this resume that I see.
Thank you so much, Uma. It is so easy to think that our resumes look perfect to us, but you've highlighted some key areas that we often overlook. Remember, folks, your resume is your first impression with the potential employer, so make it memorable. Now, moving on to our next review. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thanks. Yeah, we can look at this second resume, and kind of the first thing that jumps out at this one, I don't know if you can scroll through. This one's actually 3 pages. And so that's really too long for a resume that we'll be able to review quickly. Ideally resumes want to be really 1 page. 2 pages if you have extensive experience, can be okay. But 3 pages is really going to be too long for someone that has a minute, maybe 2 minutes at maximum to kind of look through these quickly. So that's kind of item number one that we can improve. Also kind of on the organization, we're kind of mentioned some of these, but kind of the order of these sections is going to be really important. So here we see the education as first, but for a job resume, we should really have the work experience first. So switching the order is going to be important. Also, providing clear titles, research professional experience might cover everything that's there, but really, work experience is a good descriptor of that. Also, kind of digging into kind of some of the orders of things within this resume. Again, when we're looking at things quickly, our eyes want to go to, what's there first, what's the information we want to know. And so here, if we look at the job titles themselves, we see that actually the date is the first thing we see, and that's not the most important. We want to see the job title. What were you doing? And then we want to look at, okay, how long were you doing that? So really making sure that job title is, front and center is going to be important. Again, similar comments. We don't really need that GPA. It's definitely an indicator that, yes, you're smart, but the exact number is not critical, to the hiring manager. So, we can leave that out. Another thing as well, if we look at, for example, the mechanical engineering degree here, all of these course titles, yes, those are the courses that are within a mechanical engineering degree. If there are any like specific ones that you took that were maybe electives, those are worth highlighting, but don't need to necessarily list out, everything that was in, that course of study, because that will be known by the hiring manager of, what goes into these types of degrees. And that in part is going to help you shorten a resume like this up so it doesn't, extend to 3 pages. Another example, kind of going into the second page here, is there's a lot of work experience, which is great. My recommendation here is really try and pick out the key ones and what really kind of highlight your skill in relation to, this position you're applying for. And if there are, additional ones that show you have continuous experience, which is also a good thing. Maybe they don't need a descriptive below those. Again, save space, really focus and provide more information on what's important to, the position you're applying to. And that's all just, ways to, shorten up what's being listed out here. I think another example, if we look down actually at that teaching assistant role, if we scroll up a little bit, yeah. So if we look at some of these, actually, if you could scroll up just a little bit, sorry, I'm making my pen out. Yeah. So we see a description there, assess course projects under that teaching assistant / lab instructor. That's a very vague description of some activity, invigorated tests and exams. Again, very, very vague. We want to make sure these descriptions are very clear. What was the activity you were doing? Maybe how many course projects did you review? What were the projects? Things like that. That makes the work experience stand out more, and it's because we know more about of what you're trying to tell us that you've done. And then finally on the third slide, we've already kind of talked about this as far as kind of order of events, having those leadership and software skills kind of as that second section is going to be really helpful. Because as a resume reviewer, what we want to see is, do you have relevant job experience? And then do you have some of the core skill competencies that we're looking for? So having that in that short order is very helpful. I think another thing here, we don't necessarily always need to use full sentences. So, excellent use of key software tools such as, it's a list. We're just looking for a list. We don't necessarily need that extra descriptor. And again, that helps keep these kind of resumes short and readable for the reviewer as they go through. And then finally, this is a very powerful resume because we do have research publications, as a section here. And that's a great thing to add if you do have published work within peer-reviewed or conference type publications. But this is the correct location. It shouldn't be front and center. This is, if I have space towards the end of the resume, let's include some of it. And again, to keep it to that 2-page maximum, this person has several, which is fantastic. And maybe that can be brought up in an interview, but maybe to keep it at the right length, pick your top 3, pick your top 2 in order to, again, hit that length of really being as punchy as possible for the resume itself.
Thank you, Patrick. We hope you all are jotting down some great tips. Just kidding, don't worry, you can always rewatch the video later. Remember, it's often the little details that make the biggest difference. Alrighty, let me stop sharing my screen because the fun is just beginning right now. So, your resume was a hit, and now you've landed the interview. Congratulations. While you have nailed the technical prep, today we are tackling some seemingly harmless questions that could actually make or break your chances. We are going to be doing a quick mock interview to highlight what not to say and what to say instead. So let's dive in. Uma, would you like to ask me the first question?
Sure. Hi, Apurva. Is there anything that makes you anxious about this potential role? Is there anything you would like to ask me?
Mm, well, not really. I'm clear on the job expectations. Now, I want to convey to my potential employers that I'm not anxious at all. I'm pretty confident about this job. Is this the right way, though, Uma?
Well, confidence is great. Overconfidence can create problems. And I don't mean just the impression on the interviewer, but for long-term success or growth in the job that you're applying for. If the interviewer gives you an opportunity to ask questions or show vulnerability, take that opportunity to ask questions that are most relevant to the job expectations, growth opportunities, company culture. If you have identified any gaps between your current expertise or your current role and the one that you're applying for, it would be best to acknowledge that while also mentioning how you plan to overcome that gap. So, Apurva's answer could have been, um, while I'm not necessarily anxious about anything, I acknowledge that there could be a learning curve in this new job due to XYZ. However, I have done this successfully in the past when XYZ, come up with some example. And that would say that sure, I mean there is something that I need to grow into, but I know that I have the skills and perseverance to actually get that job done and be successful at the job.
That makes so much more sense than what I just said. Thank you, Uma. Patrick, would you like to ask me the second question?
Yeah, absolutely. Could you tell us about a time there was a disagreement on your team? How did you handle it, and what was the outcome?
Well, this is so hard for me to answer because we usually don't have any disagreements. We are all on the same page about our company's mission and everyone just wants to do the right thing. So, honestly, there are no disagreements. We all do what's just best for the project. I'm feeling pretty good about my answer. I wanted to highlight that I'm totally in sync with my team. Was I right though, Patrick?
Not quite. With this question, what we're really trying to tease out is the reality of the workplace. Disagreements happen, opinions will be different, whether it's on a project team within building design, or even within school. You might have a project team within school. These things can happen. And so really what we're trying to learn here is how can you handle those disagreements, which are going to come up. You have kind of that professional, rigor and stance about you to admit, yes, these things happen. We found solutions, and we know how to work with a team. We don't think that it's always going to be agreements, agreements, agreements. So that when these happen, we know you're a team player and we can work through them very, very well. And so the example, again, I kind of mentioned, doesn't need to necessarily be from work. For people without much work experience, this is probably in part why most schools do have a lot of team projects to get you that experience of working with a team, having those disagreements and learning how to work through them, which is very important to what we all do, on a daily basis.
Yes, absolutely. There is never a situation where everybody gets along, and sometimes that's a good thing because when you look at someone's opposing point of view, something good might come out of it. And yeah, totally makes sense. Thank you, Patrick. Uma, would you like to ask me the next one?
Sure. Why are you looking to make this move? What interests you about this position?
Honestly, I'm tired of working at my current company. It's been a while and things are getting repetitive. Also, I need my pay hike. It's so good to be honest, right? It's refreshing. Is it though?
Well, yes, honesty is good. One should always bring their true selves as far as possible. But remember that onboarding a new person is a significant time and cost investment for any company. So you don't want the interviewer to think that you lack loyalty or you are not in for long-term commitment to any company because if you're bored with my company, why would you not leave me? So I guess Apurva's answer could have been a bit more tailored to the job description while continuing to be honest to some degree. Maybe she could have said, while I will miss my team and the current company, I believe that I'm ready to join XYZ in order to make a bigger impact in our industry, considering the wide variety of opportunities that this job will give me. I want to apply the knowledge I gathered during all these years that I've worked at this company, but I also want to grow by learning new complex things at this new job. So you are not you're hitting many nails here. You're saying that I have worked at this company for a long time, which is why now for my professional growth, it is the best that I move to the next company. But you're also saying that I'm going to miss my company. I'm going to miss my team. That shows that I'm not just taking this lightheartedly and just moving for the sake of it. There is a purpose for that.
Absolutely. Sometimes, even with best intentions, the answer that we think are great might not actually hit the mark. We truly hope that you guys are gaining valuable insights from today's webinar. Remember, job applications and interviews are just as much about presenting your skills as they are about showcasing your personality and your professionalism. Rashmi, do we have any questions from the audience?
We do have one question. I'll just read it out here. The question is, I'm a graduate student applying for a job. Apart from the internships, where should I write about some course projects that aren't exactly research? These are projects that wouldn't be considered research, basically, because I believe those are some things I can showcase for my skills.
I'm thinking on this. Um, what do you think, Patrick? It could be work experience too if you worked with a professor, for example, on these projects or on this coursework, or maybe if you were a teaching assistant or a research assistant or something like that. I would think that that could somehow be put under work experience, or maybe highlighted as not exactly coursework that Patrick's resume was showing, but as part of the skill over there.
Yeah, I would agree. Kind of adding um, what I've seen in the past that's been, I think, communicated well is under a degree, putting projects under that directly and saying these are the projects I did. Or if it's perhaps a senior capstone or a capstone side project, putting that directly as a work experience, I think is fair because it is, well, unfortunately, I don't believe you get paid for it. It does kind of simulate, the work experience. You're working through a team and you can highlight, everything you put into that project in that fashion.
Thank you both for those answers. We have some more questions. So, Earl asked, how would you recommend showing or highlighting work that you've done in fellowships like the Urban Design Forum?
That's an excellent question. I think those, as long as they could be considered work experience in education, just kind of keep them in that location. I think work experience is, I mean, it's not a hard and fast term. There's no exact definition to what goes in and out of that section. If it's, something that, you worked on, provide insight, gained experience from, that's definitely something that could go in there. regardless if it's, a volunteer position or, other kind of fellowship, it's still, something you gain experience in. It's still valuable to the hiring manager to understand what you learn there. So I think including in work experiences is a fair location.
I would say that, and even maybe including it, if not in work experience, then maybe under recognitions or something, just to show that you have this have been the recipient of this fellowship and stuff. That could also be quite an interesting way to put it in a resume.
Okay, lots of questions coming in. The next one is, are there differences in what you expect from resumes for entry level versus senior roles? And if so, what are those differences?
I think that the um, general overview that both Patrick and I presented on what the resume should have or should not have and stuff, that does not necessarily change between entry level and senior level, according to me. Of course, the job requirements are different, so we would definitely expect the resumes from a senior roles to be more focused on work experience as compared to the other jobs, which is natural. Um, but that's what I can think of. I mean, maybe showing more um, results in one way or the other for senior leadership roles over entry level could be an additional section that you can add to the resume.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just to add to that, one thing that I would expect to see different to kind of like a senior level versus entry level. On a senior level role, we're not really looking to see, what was your summer internship or what was your, summer job in college, things like that. Those things need to be removed from your resumes after you get your first job, because now you have kind of more relevant experience. So this can kind of be retired, if you will. So those are the things you wouldn't want to see kind of on a senior level. Really, that senior level wants to focus in what's career focus, what's industry focus experience that you have, and kind of omit out things that might not be relevant at that point.
Great. Those are some great tips. Thank you both. There's another question which says, would you recommend including a hyperlink to a project in your resume? It doesn't really clarify what the project is, but I'm assuming it's some sort of web-hosted link for, it could be a portfolio or a specific project if it was developed in a way that could be hosted online.
For this one, I wouldn't necessarily include it in the hopes that the person reviewing the resume is going to click and actually look at it. Because that's going to be unlikely, whether it's someone like myself or Uma reviewing it, or reviewing 20 in a day. We might not have time, or often we might have a recruiter that's doing some of these reviews as well, supporting it. They wouldn't click on that because they might not understand what the link is. That being said, I think having an example can still be very powerful, perhaps even in the interview. Because then it could be almost a show and tell within the interview to answer a question you might get and say, oh, here's an example, let me talk through and also share this. That can be a better point to kind of go to some past projects if they're publicly available, of course.
Great.
Yep, great.
Thank you. One more question from the Q&A here. What are the key things you look at when considering the CVs of fresher master student graduates looking for their first jobs in the industry? So since this is very similar to the question about experienced professionals versus fresh graduates, maybe we can focus on if someone has spent quite a while in grad school, for example, someone doing a master's or PhD degree, and they might have held jobs or not held jobs while in college. What would be the expectation? How would you, when people do master's degree, they may expect that they will have a leverage in the industry. How should they portray their resume so that they don't they can differentiate themselves from other graduates who don't have advanced degrees?
I'm thinking that for research-based jobs, which I don't think either Patrick or I look for, but those kind of jobs would have a slightly different requirement from resumes too, where probably they want you to list out all of the research because that will be then a relevant experience or relevant skill that you have for that job or something like that. For the industry that we are in, this being ibpsa, and unless you're going into one of those research oriented jobs, you might want to think of how you can bring out the most important findings of the research or how you contributed to that or what skills you developed or applied to that research and showcase that in your resume. Or probably show how you will apply that into the real world application if it is not for a research-based job.
No, I definitely agree with that. Kind of going back to, I think, one of the previous questions too, if you could frame perhaps some of that research maybe as a project that was completed in that fashion too, and kind of show what was your contribution, what was the outcome, that can putting it in more language that's going to be relatable to kind of industry work can be helpful as well.
Thank you both. Lots of questions coming in, so I'm going to keep going. Should we incorporate exact phrases or their synonyms from the job description in our resume to capture employers' attention? So just to clarify, it seems if you have some keywords in the desired qualifications list, is it advised to replicate them or use synonyms? To what extent should the resume be tailored, and how much is too much? Is maybe a way we can answer this.
That's a good question. I think in my experience, where we expect to see most of any kind of tailoring to the job is actually going to be in a cover letter if you're including one. So a cover letter can be a powerful thing to include if you're applying, especially to a specific job. And then that can be, no more than a paragraph, maybe a paragraph and a half. And that's where you might want to, highlight, I read this in the job description. Here's something in my resume to look at. Really looking forward to, hearing back for an interview, etc. That in a cover letter can be very powerful because they'll see that you read and understood what the job is. But as far as, I guess, synonyms and exact phrases within the resume, I'll be honest, you could probably sneak them in. I probably wouldn't catch them. So I'm not sure I'm fast enough at catching things like that.
I think using the exact key phrases and keywords come in more handy when we are looking at an ATS-friendly resume. That's where the computer is doing the job, so they want to see if the exact word matches with the one you have on your resume. But I think if it's a person who's reading your resume, they will understand no matter what the word you use.
Great. Just last few questions. So this is a good one. What's the proper etiquette for following up when you haven't heard back from a recruiter?
If you are applying directly to a person that you have met in the industry somewhere or something like that, and now wanting to follow up, if that's the question, then I would say giving it, first of all, okay, I need to back up. Rashmi, is the question more about after having the interview or after just sending the resume?
Let's do both, because both are it. So for after sending the resume, I guess the response would be more over email, whereas after the interview would be even more tricky, because I think we're all pretty familiar with email follow-ups and not hearing back. So maybe we just focus on after an interview, you had an interview, we haven't heard back. Maybe
Okay.
that will streamline that.
Okay. So I would first say that send an email right after the interview has happened, saying, I mean, thanking the interviewer for the time and how you're excited about the job, and let that be true to the situation, and not just to fluff up the situation or something. If you have truly cared about getting that particular job and stuff, because that goes a long way to show your commitment to this process, to finding a job, to then being a responsible employee as well and stuff like that. So first, doing that goes a long way, because when you don't do that, that sort of stands out, that, well, didn't this person care at all? And then once you have sent a follow-up right after the interview, that keeps the door open, where if you haven't heard back from the interviewer in the next 10 days, then you can follow up with that in that same email chain, saying, just following up to see if there are any additional questions related to this job or my experience that I can answer to ensure that we can move forward or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think definitely agree with all those points, Uma. I guess another tip around when to follow up, kind of as you're closing out an interview process, kind of your final question can always be, what are the next steps? Can your interviewer provide some kind of, timeline? Obviously, it's never going to be exact, but that can give you a sense of, are they going to be moving quickly to get information back to me and I can follow up within, 5 days or so, or did they kind of flag that it might take them some time? Then you want to make sure you respect that and kind of, can circle back at a reasonable time as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Patrick. And we are here talking about how the applicants need to be doing certain things right. I think there is also a good interviewer, or an interviewer who really is looking for the talent and wants to recruit on an immediate basis. I think a little bit of onus is on him or her as well, to communicate that upfront, that thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Next steps will be this. Um, and also sometimes being candid, that we are only warming the bench right now, but we keep looking for new talent and stuff. We expect that something will open up in the next 4 months based on our outlook, and that time we will circle back. So you should you should not shy away, and you should feel empowered to ask this question as to what the next steps are, or when you should feel like you will hear back.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because usually, if you're applying for a job, you feel very hesitant to ask such questions that, are you interviewing other people? What is going to happen? Am I going to hear back? Did I do well? So, I actually do have a follow-up question based on our conversation. If you are rejected for a position, then is it appropriate to ask for feedback? And what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So it's definitely, I think, appropriate to ask for feedback. I wouldn't say that every firm, every company is set up in a way to provide feedback so far. I know that many firms that work internationally, it's actually built into some standards that they follow that they do provide feedback. So those firms might be more set up to get something to you. And often when you're requesting the feedback, it might be going to the recruiter or the hiring man or the hiring team within the firm. You won't be asking likely directly who will provide the feedback. And so it's cognizant to know that, because in a way you're asking through someone that might necessarily have the feedback directly, but they need to then ask someone. And so it can take a while to get back because it's not a direct line of communication, unfortunately. But it is something that I think we as kind of hiring managers are more and more aware of. It is, we do get this request, and I think we do our best to kind of get that information back. But again, it's not always going to be possible, just with, the busyness of kind of hiring managers and our day-to-day life. Sometimes it could slip through, but can never hurt to ask for, I would say.
I think that's really great advice. Thank you so much. Speaking of advice, we have a question that's more about navigating personality types, which is definitely interesting. The question is it necessary to be slightly extroverted during interviews? Asking from an introvert's perspective of finding it hard to talk to new people. What would be some tips if your work shows your skills better than the way you talk?
That's an excellent question. And the reason why it's excellent in my eyes is because I have been an introvert all my life, and believe it or not, your job and everything teaches you to be a different person when you're on camera versus off camera. But to directly answer that question, in my opinion, it is best to be the person you are and not show that something that you are not, because that is not going to benefit you in the long run. Neither is it going to benefit the company that hires you for that particular job. Having said that, don't confuse being an advocate for your work as being extroverts. You have to be able to develop the skills to talk about your own work or how you will contribute to this job or the company or something. And for that, you don't need to be an extrovert. You can just state the facts. You don't need to be extra friendly, extra talkative, but and practice can help you with that answer the questions to the point if you are an introvert.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely. I mean, I think a lot of us in this industry probably would call ourselves introverts, and we kind of learn on the job or through practice to be more extroverted. Certainly, as we're interviewing, as we're on various calls, etc. Um, and so I think a big thing that I always recommend, uh, as far as kind of talking about what you're doing, providing answers, you do want to expand somewhat. What you don't want is someone asks a question, you answer in about 20 seconds flat, and then it just kind of pauses. That doesn't lead to a good interview. You want to expand on these things and kind of have confidence in what you have done and what you can share out. And I think a good way to think about that confidence is if you have that interview, you know, the hiring managers already reviews your resume, they already think you're probably a very good candidate. And really what the interview is about confirming what they think based on your resume. So you're really, you're halfway there. Build on that confidence of, having that interview to kind of build yourself up a little bit beforehand to know that yes, you can do well as you talk through and share more detail about what was already seen to highlight some really good aspects of your experience and your career so far.
Thank you. I hope that will help the introverted ones among us. And I think you made a very good point about distinguishing being an extrovert from being confident about your work and the facts. So it's good to separate that you don't need to be overly friendly and be someone you're not, but you need to have confidence to state the facts. And that is something that comes with practice and experience. I think we have maybe two more questions. One is, how should candidates handle a question that they don't immediately know the answer to?
Interesting. I'm trying to think of an example because generally in an interviewer would either ask about your own experience or something like that, or something related to your industry. Like I'm if we are all in sustainability industry, for example, then what are the trends that you're seeing in the market or something like that. So I'm not sure I know the answer to this, because it is, if you are going for a job in the industry that you are pretty much in, then at least some level of that is expected. You can probably say that based on my limited knowledge of through my work experience or my college study experience, this is what I know, but I'm sure that there is more to learn once you get into the industry and actually start working on it or something.
Just to refine maybe that question a little bit more, perhaps if we look at it as someone saying that they've, to give an example, Uma, like let's say they have experience with the well building standard, and you follow up with a question about a specific credit where like how, not saying that that's what happens in most interviews, but I have been in some interviews which were more technical, where they did want to see my technical proficiency and ask me specific questions about what I said I knew about. So even though, a candidate may not be falsifying that they know about it, they may just not know in as much detail. So what might be a good way to handle that situation where you are sort of caught off guard and you don't really know the exact answer? How can you sound competent and still walk away from that with a positive outcome?
That's an interesting challenge for sure, the kind of the technical interview portion. Um, I guess rule number one is never make something up, because if someone's asking you, they probably know the answer and they're going to know if you make it up. So definitely don't want to do that. That'll be a kind of a pretty large red flag. I think a decent way to answer, if it's something like, well, for example, a very detailed thing, you can just be honest of saying, well, I have not run into, that specific credit or specific, aspect yet in my career, but, look forward to learning about it, in this new role. And then you can kind of ask, back to the interviewers, like, could you take a couple of minutes to explain to me? I'd love to also learn. And that shows, again, the honesty, which is always important, and that kind of willingness and interest in learning these things, not kind of brushing off as like, oh, I don't know, and hey, I don't care to learn. I really want to, flag that, you do want to understand what it is.
And I think it also depends on your experience level and the job level that you're applying for. If you are applying for a slightly senior level, then there are certain expectations that you probably should be technically sound. But if I'm looking for somebody who is at a junior position, then as Patrick said, that then my idea behind asking such a difficult question could pretty much be, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to accept that I don't know this thing and I need to understand that thing? There are many ways that hiring managers will try to see if you are the best fit, not only for the job, but for as a team.
Great.
Yeah.
I think that's, sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, on kind of the flip side of the question, if it's also, it might just be a vague question and it was asked in a very odd way, don't be afraid to say, could you clarify the question so I can get you the info? We're not perfect as hiring managers. We might ask a question that made sense in our head and didn't make any sense once it came out. So definitely, feel empowered to ask for clarification as well.
Yeah, I think also just saying that, yeah, I don't know about this right now, but yeah, I'm willing to find out, or like I will let you know. I can go back and then I can go back and let you know later. I think that is also that also shows that you are willing to learn and might be helpful to just overall showcase that, yes, I do have weaknesses, but I'm also willing to work on them.
Sounds like a summary of that is ask questions if you don't understand the question. And if you understand the question and don't know, don't make up stuff. Just admit what you don't know and ideally follow it up with a request to explain what the right answer would have been if time permits. Um, on that note, so we're getting to the end of the webinar, and I have a great question to end the list of questions, which is, what is a good way to end an interview that leaves a positive impression? So we already discussed the recommendation to follow up after an interview, but in the interview itself, when you're about to all your questions are done, how do you end the interview effectively?
I guess asking some relevant questions, as Patrick was saying, because usually when I interview somebody, I keep that for last, that I go through my questions and I say that, well, that is all I had for you. Is there something that you would like to ask me? So asking relevant questions and then asking, can you tell me what the next steps would be, what I can look for, that's a good way to end it. And I think just thinking and saying that now that I've learned more about this job and the company through the interview process while speaking with you, I'm more excited about the joining the company and working with you. So I look forward to hearing back from you. I think that simple, but powerful, I guess.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Kind of reaffirming your interest in the position right towards the end is, I think, a good reminder that you've throughout the interview you've learned more about what the role might be and are still very interested and looking forward to the next steps. I think it's a powerful way to close out. And then yeah, always having a question for the interviewer that shows, again, you've perhaps done a little research on the company. Maybe it's about the company, the question, about the role, something like that. It shows you're involved in the hiring process and not kind of passively joining the interview, and that's very powerful as well.
I guess that's it for all of our audience questions. Folks, if you have any more questions, please send it right now. Um, all right. A huge, huge, huge thank you to our panelists, Uma and Patrick, for sharing their expertise, and to all of you for joining us today. This is the QR code if you are interested to join EPSI. We do organize a lot of fun events, a lot of learning events, and we would love to hear from you on what you want us to do because we are here for you. And be sure to check out ibpsa USA's website for any upcoming events. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch the recording and explore other webinars. We wish you all the best on your career journey. Go out there, shine, and have a fantastic day. Thank you so much, everyone.